Welcome back to my living room floor. It has been a couple of days. I flew home from Santiago on Monday and it was an incredible trip. Spoiler, my dad and I walked the whole Camino Frances from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on the French side of the Pyrenees to Santiago de Compostela in Galicia. And it was an unforgettable trip. It's going to take me a couple of weeks to put together a video of that whole experience. I haven't even looked at the footage. I've imported it and that's it. So today we're just going to ease back into it. I'll give you a couple of stats about the walk in general, and then we'll do a bit of a post-Camino gear review. I haven't even opened the bag since I got home. I've been saving it for you. So Camino Frances took us 34 days from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago, and that includes 2 rest days, so 32 days of walking. In those 32 days we walked 808 kilometres. We did a couple of alternative routes to see a ancient Roman road or climb a beautiful hill. And speaking of climbing, across those walking days we climbed 14,500 metres, and we descended 14,316 metres, so almost even, you know. And our total elapsed time for all the walking, from when we put on the backpack in the morning to when we put it down in the afternoon, was 8 days, 6 hours, 52 minutes and 27 seconds. It's not an exact science. Some days I would forget to turn off the watch while we were queuing to get into the albergue, you know, but it's still nice to have some numbers to reflect on. My dad and I were both extremely lucky. We had no injuries and no real blisters to speak of. I had 1 or 2, maybe the size of my baby fingernail, in the first kind of 2 weeks. And I treated those, and I think my dad had 1 really small one as well, but nothing compared to some of the blisters you see people dealing with. So all in all, we had an incredibly fortunate walking experience. But how did everything else hold up? In general, I have what I call like a one-touch rule. So after a week of walking, I did a mental assessment of had I touched everything in my bag at least once. And I almost had, which was pretty good going. The couple of things that I didn't really use on this trip aren't necessarily things that I would actually leave at home in future. For instance, I didn't use my first aid kit at all, and that is exactly the way you want it to be. However, I also, which was very surprising to me, did not wear my sunglasses at all. I was wearing my trusty bagger cap every day, and when you're walking in the mornings you have the sun behind you, and then we would finish by early afternoon most times, so the sunset that would have been ahead of me, I was never walking into it, so I never actually had to deal with sun rays into my eyes. And because I lived in the hat, I think I just didn't need the extra shade of the glasses. But I wouldn't go to a country so sunny and so famous for being hot without a pair of sunglasses, so I'm still glad I had them. This backpack in general, it is the Low Alpine Air Zone Pro. Yes, 33 to 40 litre bag. I bought this over 10 years ago for when I went to do the Camino del Norte, and it is a fine backpack. I used it again this time because out of the couple of bags that I have, it was the one that was the right size. However, the Osprey 65 litre bag that I use all the time here at home, especially when I'm going camping, it has a way more comfortable frame for your back, and part of me wonders would I have been better off using the bigger bag and just cinching everything in. It would have looked oversized, but it probably would have felt way more comfortable. Like, this bag is okay. It's not great, but it's not terrible. But I think I would have been way more comfortable wearing that bag. C'est la vie. This is probably the last big trip that this bag is going on. Quite a few things are perishing, so I'll still use it for mucking about, but it probably won't be a big trip bag. So, you know, it's really nice for it to come full circle and get to go on a second Camino with me. My second out of, I guess, 3 bags is this Columbia like crossbody bag. Well, I wore it crossbody anyway. I wore it like this every day. So what I really liked about having a bag like this was that, oh, it's got a hole in it. It was well used anyway. I lived with this bag. The hip straps on this have quite small pockets, and in the pockets I had to take them out for flying home, but I had a very small tube of emergency sun cream, lip balm, my pocket knife, those kind of real small things that would fit into a very small pocket. There was no hope of my phone or any of the kind of daily things that I needed fitting in there. So I wore this and just had easy access to all of the everyday things I needed. So I have my purse in the back pocket there, just that in there basically. In the main body of the bag I had this, which is this here was my pilgrim credentials, my pilgrim passport. I had my extra postcards that I was writing for friends, and then I had this extra notebook that I was collecting my excess stamps in along the way, and it was all in this plastic cover that has more or less stayed intact. I then would have had the GoPro, my little half frame 35mm film camera, and this, which was an integral filming equipment piece. And I'll talk about how I filmed and documented the Camino in another video. I'll go into that whole experience in its own thing. Was there anything else that I kept in this? Not really. These are the things that I would reach for all the time. I had a pen in there for writing the date after I'd get a stamp. But that was really handy to have. And yeah, like after we were walking, this is what I would keep on me as we continued on to go elsewhere. Out for dinner, whatever. So this just lived with me. It's gonna need a really good wash, I think. And the logo and everything peeled off actually. Okay, and then my third bag was just this tote bag. I had looked at getting a like small stuff away like backpack, one of those like tiny osprey ones. I had one before, but I lost it about 5 years ago. So I just brought this tote bag instead. And this is what I would use in the afternoons when we'd finish walking if I wanted to bring a lot of stuff with me. And this is what I used as my carry-on for flying home. So it kind of has some of what I would carry around anyway. My water bottle, I never needed more than 1 litre. 1 litre was good for me. It's a very personal preference how much water you like to carry, but the amount of times we saw water fountains along the route or places to fill up, 1 litre was fine. All of my notebooks, this is a real luxury item if we were to kind of classify things into piles, which I might do as I unpack, and then we can weigh everything and know how much the different categories weighed. So I'm going to put this, and I'm going to put all my cameras and stuff in this little bag. These are going to be my luxury items. So in here I have my diary and my like notebook that I kind of kept a journal, like 4 pens and a Kindle. This is all pure luxury weight. But but sometimes you can really focus on being lightweight, but then everyone needs some sort of comforts, so those were mine. And I was happy to carry the weight, to be honest. And then this I have in this bag because of flying, and this is kind of my camera safety box. It has all of my camera batteries, it has cables, it has extra SD cards. This was my like electronics box. I have a bigger electronics bag overall in there, but this housed a lot of the important things. And then this was my battery bank. This is a tank of a battery bank, which I was really grateful to have because my dad's plug for the wall stopped working very early on, so we were sharing one plug. So some days he would use my plug to charge up his stuff, and then I would just use the battery bank, and then in a couple of days time I'd charge up the battery bank again. So it worked really, really well for us. And I just like having a lot of extra power. My phone battery isn't amazing these days, so I kind of need this at least once a day. I never did weigh my full bag. I don't have a normal weighing scales at home. I just have one for like cooking. It's the only weighing, and an even smaller one for making coffee. They are the only weighing scales we have in the house. My trusty sandals. While I was walking, these actually lived in a side pocket of the bag. One side pocket was my water bottle, the other one was my sandals. Here they are, looking a lot more worn and battered than when I set off, but so happy I had them. Honestly, a godsend. Some people just had like very basic flip-flops, which I think would have been nice for some of the showers, but I think for the amount of time that we like specifically spent not actually hiking and like walking with our bags, I kind of wanted this to be my minimum level of proper shoe. Some people had kind of more robust hiking sandals. I think those are really, really useful, especially if you get blisters and your feet need a day or two of walking without your heavier shoes on. A lot of pharmacies were recommending people to walk in their sandals, and if you only had a pair of flip-flops, it wasn't going to be very feasible. So yeah, really, really happy with how these guys worked out. For how light and simple they are, they were great. They're Tevas, and Teva do like fancier hiking sandals as well. This is my sleeping bag, my trusty Snugpak Traveller. It did great. I think what I really appreciate about this sleeping bag is that it is a cheap sleeping bag. Now, it's not cheap as in €20. It definitely cost me a little bit more than that when I got it, but it's fully synthetic. I was never worried about it. There were bed bugs. I and my dad thankfully never got them, but we knew of people who did. And having a sleeping bag that wasn't precious, that I would have felt okay throwing in a washing machine on a high heat, was great. So I think this was the perfect level of cheap and cheerful, with being small and light-ish. There were a lot of people there with sleeping bag liners. So liners are really, really small and light, like they pack down like this big. And I think that was probably okay for the second half of our walk. But the first half was cold and not everywhere had blankets, and I preferred having my sleeping bag over using some of the hostel blankets. So I think you can make your mind up either way. There's pros and cons to both, and as long as you're willing to accept the pros and the cons and just live with that choice. But I was definitely happy to have this. There were a few nights where I was too hot, but it was fine. It was livable. What comes next? Yes. Okay, one of the few things that I could have left at home, but didn't. And I could have shipped home, but didn't. This is my camera bag. So this is the bag that camera there would have been housed in for protection. And I used it travelling over, and I used it a couple of times in Spain. But I am a little reckless with my camera. I definitely don't treat it with the same level of respect that other people do. And so it was often times just loose in my tote bag, or I was just carrying it, or it was attached to my bag. I feel like using a camera for long-term documentary style stuff, you either have to be very particular and very precious and very careful and have a whole system for keeping it clean and managing it and everything, or no system. I ended up with no system. It is a working piece of equipment. If it gets a couple of dings, that's okay with me. Just as long as you keep working, then I'm happy. So yeah, I actually think this might have been overkill. But then if I didn't have it, would I have wanted it? I don't know. So I didn't really use this. Now, it doesn't weigh much, and it got pretty squashed in the bottom of my bag. So I don't think I was sacrificing too much carrying it. But, well, we'll see when I weigh it later what it comes out at. This bag isn't actually packed exactly how it would have been packed when I was carrying it. It's been packed for flying. I feel like while you travel, you figure out exactly how everything clicks and fits together for you. So this here would have been my technology bag, but because when you're flying you have to keep your batteries carry on, it's why it was separated. It's a very important fridge magnet from these guys. So what else is in here that isn't? I left a few cables and stuff in this bag because I didn't need to carry on every single cable with me. So there we go. That's my full technology filming kit. So obviously, if you're not bringing 3+ cameras with you and the batteries and everything that you need for those and the film, you're not going to have as big a technology bag as I do. But I needed all this to be able to do that. So that's definitely quite dense. Ah yes, my trusty jumper. Right now I'm actually wearing one that I bought in Santiago. That's the back, if you can see. And because this was bulkier and heavier, this is what I flew home in. This is the jumper that served me so well. I wore this every day, through everything. And actually, even looking at the shoulders, like it really held up so well. For like, I wore it with the bag, I wore it by itself, I wore it under things, over things. It's the Patagonia R1 range. Yeah, has an R on it anyway. I'm pretty sure the R1 range. I've worn these jumpers for years. I've had this one years, and it still looks pretty okay. It's probably looking a little scruffy after living in it for a month, but you know, I'll wash it a few times and it'll be fine. So that's the first bit of clothing we've come across. Except for what I'm wearing. I'm wearing one of my 2 to 3 outfits. I'm wearing the leggings, I'm wearing socks that I bought over there, and I'm wearing the t-shirt that I flew home in. See, I'm giving you a true true recreation of my very, very tired self from a couple of days ago. This is my toiletry bag. It might look a little bit big, but it has shampoo, conditioner that are both basically empty now. They're like that size, and I washed my hair just the right amount to use the bottle in the 5 weeks we were there. Deodorant, my little penknife is in there for flying. My sun cream, I still absolutely swear by the P20 sun cream. I used it again for this trip and I didn't get burnt once. In fact, I got barely tanned, which, you know, was a little sad in the, like, when you're a very, very pale Irish person. But yeah, just more and more sun creams, antihistamines that I bought over there. I brought a comb as opposed to a full hairbrush. Well, I bought a comb over there as opposed to a full hairbrush, because when you have this much hair, you do need something. Yeah, so there you go. That was my personal toiletry bag. As you may be noticing, everything is in a dry bag. I didn't wear a big poncho that a lot of walkers wear on the Camino that covers the bag, and I didn't bring an outer waterproof cover. sometimes I do use those. They're pretty okay. But if you're spending a whole day in the rain, the only way to really keep your stuff dry is in waterproof dry bags. So everything I had could go in a dry bag if it's so needed. And that is how I kept my stuff dry, because I did not have a dry Camino. Here is my rain jacket. It is the Patagonia Storm 10, the one that I've used for everything, and this may have been one of its last big trips as well, because it's definitely not quite as waterproof as it was, and it's definitely going to need a good wash now, but it did amazing as always. I really have loved this jacket so much, and I have worn it to death. What's next in here? Well, this I only had to carry home. This I didn't carry the whole way with me. This is my Compostela, my certificate of completion of the Camino Frances. Yeah, feels very fishing in gold. I'm going to leave that back there. It has tape on it so that my dad and I could tell whose was whose. This is a small birthday present that I bought for my dad in Santiago, because it was his birthday when I walked the Camino, and I then forgot to give to him. So I'm going to keep it wrapped and hidden, and I will give it to him later. My shell! I got this in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in the registration office. I took it off of my bag for flying because I didn't want it to get hurt, and I'm very happy that it made it home in one piece. No matter what way I tied it when I was walking, it always flipped this way around. So I don't think I got any footage or photos or whatever of just how pretty this side was. It was always sitting like this, but that's okay. I loved it all the same. Right now my clothes are divided between two dry bags. One is the clean clothes and one is dirty. While I was over there I didn't use two, I just used the one. And then I used the inner side pocket of my bag as my dirty laundry collection point. But when I was flying home, I had the extra dry bag. I said I'd divide them up, even though I'm going to rewash everything now that I'm home myself. Clothes wise, I'll take out the last bit of clothing that's also in here. My down jacket. I was so unsure about bringing this and about bringing the amount of layers that I brought, and I'm so glad I did. Early May in Spain can be cold, and it was cold. I wore this jacket a lot those first 2 weeks, especially when we stopped walking. There were a couple of days where when we finished walking, I was wearing 4 layers. I had my t-shirt, I had my sun hoodie, I had my black hoodie, and I had my down jacket on. I was cold. So I'm really glad that I actually brought everything I brought. I wore everything multiple times. So I went with a bunch of underwear, 2 sports bras, 2 t-shirts, a hoodie, that regular black hoodie, my sun hoodie, which I also sometimes just wore as its own layer, which was really good for them when it flipped to the other side and was really hot as well. Having the hood and the long sleeves in a light form was amazing. I have what else is in here? I had 2 pairs of shorts and 1 pair of long leggings. I had my towel, and I bought new socks. So I went over with my 1000 mile socks, my running ankle socks, which I have really loved, and part of my aim for this Camino was not to try and buy a lot of new gear for it, to use a lot of what I had, but the socks I brought were just a bit used. So I ended up seeing these Ingenie socks. They're toe socks, and I've always wanted to try them, but I've never seen them in person in Ireland. So when I saw these a couple of days in, I took it as a sign, as my chance to try them. And so I bought 2 pairs and wore them basically for the rest of the Camino, and really liked them. I really enjoyed them. They worked really well for me. And I think that is kind of key. Like my dad wore twin skin socks with the 2 layers. Spending money on socks is such an investment in your feet. So whether you like the toe socks like I do, the twin skin like my dad, other like wool-based hiking socks, whatever you find that works for you, stick to it, and don't be too frugal with your feet. And we're almost to the end, so the last thing in the bottom of my bag is my first aid kit, which I have never had to touch, and I'm delighted to say that. And then on the flip side we have my head torch, which I used more towards the end than at the beginning. There was once or twice in the beginning where I had a morning where I was like, oh, I should probably take out the head torch, and I fell victim to that mentality of, oh, then I have to stop and open the bag, which is, we all suffer from it sometimes, it's always silly. But I used a lot more at the end. We got up very early in our last couple of weeks, and I used it a lot then, so I was glad to have it. And finally, I had a little extra Platypus half-litre water bottle, which I did not use for the whole thing. This is the first time it's left the pocket since I left, but of all incredibly light things to not have touched, I'm also okay with that one. So yeah, I think that's everything out of the bag. It both feels like a lot and a little. My shoes, I wore a pair of Hoka Speed Ghost trail runners, and they did exactly how I expected. This is like my 8th pair of them, so I know they work pretty well for my feet, and I also knew that they would probably wear out before the Camino ended. So I would say a little over a week out from finishing, a little over the 600 kilometer mark, they were definitely starting to feel pretty dead. But I knew I only had about a week or so left, so I wore them for that remainder week, and like they were fine. They were totally fine. I didn't want to go breaking in a new pair of shoes with that many miles done and so few to do. So they made it to the end. They're downstairs. I'm going to throw them in a wash as well and use them as my kicking about shoes. Maybe I should grab them just to show you. Maybe. So apart from the fact that they've picked up a bit of dog hair now that I've gotten home, excuse the dog hair, but like the soles are pretty worn. Like they don't look as bad as I think they feel on. So like if I had to keep hiking in them, I probably could. But now that they're done, now that the Camino is done, they are done. They won't be seeing any more trails with me, apart from casual dog walks and that kind of stuff. But they did fantastic. Like, they stayed in one piece. Like, I met a lot of people at the end who were duct taping or had holes everywhere. Like, they did very, very well. I'm very happy with them. I saw a lot of people wearing Hokas on it. A few people wearing it's called the Stinton. A couple of their hybrids, which I think was a good call, because there's only a couple of days in the whole walk where you need the trail shoe part of the shoe. There's a lot of easy walking. A lot of the path is a wide gravel track where you don't really need the softness or the lugs of a trail runner. So I think a hybrid might be a good call because the rubber's a little more durable, but I think a lot of people really liked the Hokas for their cushioning. My dad really liked them as well. He wore the same shoes, and he was a fan. He also actually had the Hoka Speed Goat sandals, for want of a better turn of phrase. It's basically the sole of a Speed Goat, but a sandal on top. And I think that worked really well for him, because he came into the Camino with a foot injury, and so they made sure that he had constant support across the whole Camino. So, you know, that was good. So yeah, it's going to take me a couple of weeks to put together the Camino Frances video in its totality. So if you have any questions, I might do a little Q&A video before then, talking through experiences or whatever questions you might have about walking for 5 weeks, or tough souls questions in general. It doesn't have to be quite Camino specific, but I'm expecting they will mostly be. A huge thank you to our patrons over on Patreon, who really, really helped make this a reality. It's thanks to them that I was able to buy the new shoes before I went, and things like that. So yeah, really, really, really grateful for their continued support. And yeah, I guess I will talk to you later. My shoes at the end are 183 grams. I wonder how much rubber that means that they probably lost.